What if the most ordinary places were hiding the darkest secrets? A street too quiet to be natural. A phone call from a building that no longer exists. A carved face that looks too much like someone missing. These aren't urban legends. They're part of a series of chilling true crime investigations that blur the line between fact and fear. In this documentary, 5 haunting cases unfold, each more disturbing than the last. Some vanished without a trace. Others left something behind. Welcome to Unsolved Archives, where we delve into the hidden, the mysterious, and the unanswered. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight could be the key to unlocking the truth. The locked room on Avery Hill. It was the type of house that blended into the quiet rows of Avery Hill. A modest 2-story colonial with fading blue paint and a white mailbox that hadn't been checked in days. On March 13, 2017, the peaceful illusion of the neighborhood cracked when a call came in from a concerned resident. The complaint was simple. Loud, looping music had been playing from 418 Avery Hill Drive for nearly 2 days straight. The same song, an instrumental jazz piece with an eerie saxophone solo, echoed across the lawn every morning and late into the night. When police arrived, they knocked. No answer. The blinds were drawn tight. The mailbox overflowed. One officer circled the property and noted the back door was chained shut from the inside. They decided to enter by force. Inside, they found Glenn Roberts, 35 years old, unmarried, a software developer who worked remotely, dead at his desk. His office was on the 2nd floor, and the door had been locked from the inside with a sliding bolt and a chair wedged underneath the handle. All windows were latched tight, no broken glass, no signs of struggle. Glenn sat slumped over his desk. A thin line of dried blood ran from his left nostril, and his eyes were wide open. In his hand was a half-solved Rubik's Cube, and next to it on the desk was a sheet of paper with the typed words. He said it was a game. The official time of death was estimated to be 36 hours prior, right around the time neighbors first noticed the strange music. The room itself was undisturbed, but officers felt the air was unusually cold. There were no signs of a break-in. No fingerprints. No evidence of poisoning, trauma, or overdose. It looked like a natural death, except nothing about the scene was natural. Detectives brought in Glenn's younger sister, Rachel, to walk them through her brother's lifestyle. She was hesitant at first, but soon confessed that Glenn had grown paranoid in recent months. He had withdrawn from family gatherings and told her cryptic things over the phone. He claimed someone had hacked his home devices, his webcam would turn on by itself, lights flickered, music playlists changed without warning. He thought someone was watching him through code. He also became obsessed with a puzzle game he'd received anonymously in the mail 3 months before his death. It wasn't digital, it was a custom-built, wooden brain teaser with rotating dials and sliding compartments. Glenn told Rachel it came with no instructions, just a sticky note that read, "Level 1 begins with silence." He worked on it obsessively. He kept it on his desk, and at one point stopped working altogether just to solve it. When Rachel last saw him 2 weeks before his death, he had dark circles under his eyes and claimed he heard something every time he got a piece of the puzzle right, something that came from inside the walls. The puzzle box was never found in the house. The typed note beside Glenn's body was also strange. Investigators traced the font to Glenn's own printer. They found fingerprints on the paper, only his. Yet Rachel swore Glenn never used that phrase. The whole family, she said, hated games. A week later, the coroner's report returned inconclusive. Glenn had no prior health issues. Toxicology was clean. The most they could determine was a sudden cardiac event, possibly brought on by stress, but even that seemed unlikely for someone so young and fit. The police closed the case as death by natural causes with unusual circumstances. But Rachel wasn't satisfied. She had Glenn's hard drives analyzed by a private investigator. What they found only deepened the mystery. Hidden in a subfolder buried deep within his system was a series of encrypted files. Once cracked, they contained video recordings from Glenn's webcam, dozens of them. All short clips, mostly showing Glenn sitting at his desk solving the wooden puzzle. But in 4 of the clips, something was off. A shadow moves behind him, barely perceptible. The shape lingers by the closet. In another clip, Glenn stares directly into the camera with a look of horror. He reaches for the webcam as if to cover it, and the video cuts out. Worse, the final clip, time-stamped just 2 hours before Glenn's estimated time of death, shows him staring at something just outside the door. The audio is corrupted, but faintly, underneath the static, is a whispering voice. The only word clearly deciphered: solve. The investigation briefly reopened, but led nowhere. There were no signs of break-ins, no strange fingerprints, no sign of the puzzle box or any clue about who had sent it. 3 months after Glenn's death, Rachel began receiving packages with no return address. Inside each was a photo, 1 per envelope. Blurry images of different people sitting at desks, each holding what looked like a similar puzzle box. In every photo, the person's expression was tense, eyes locked forward, just like Glenn's in the final video. The last envelope contained a single USB drive. On it was a text file. No sender. No location. Just 5 words. You're next. Level 2 begins. Rachel moved out of state. She changed her name, deleted her social media, but she never stopped looking over her shoulder. The photo envelopes stopped arriving after a year, but she keeps them all in a locked cabinet. She never opened the puzzle box that arrived 2 months ago. She says if she ever hears that jazz song again, she'll burn her house down and disappear. The Trail of Painted Stones. The disappearance of Ruby Gardner was the kind of case that towns don't forget. A cold wind haunted the community of Mill Creek, Montana, long after the headlines stopped printing her name. It began on October 5, 2012, an unusually warm afternoon for that time of year. Ruby, a bright and curious 9-year-old, had just gotten off the school bus. Her walk home was short, barely 3 blocks. But she never arrived. The bus driver, Mrs. Ellison, was the last confirmed person to see her. She remembered Ruby waving, backpack bouncing behind her, turning off Maple Drive toward the wooded path she often used as a shortcut. An hour later, when her mother called the school in a panic, the search began. Within 24 hours, the entire town had mobilized. Search parties combed the woods, the fields, even the shallow creek that ran behind the elementary school. But nothing turned up, until the 3rd day, when a search dog led officers deep into a wooded ravine behind Maple Drive and stopped at a strange formation. It was a single flat river stone painted with a deep blue spiral. Within minutes, more stones were found, 10 of them, spaced out along a faint path, each hand painted with different symbols: a red X, a green eye, a black triangle, a gold sun. The paint was fresh. The stones were clean and deliberately arranged, all leading farther into the forest. The trail ended at the edge of an old drainage tunnel. No signs of Ruby. No clothes. No blood. Nothing. But deep inside the tunnel, they found something that sent chills through every officer there. A pair of small shoes, neatly placed side by side, and a plastic recorder, Ruby's favorite instrument, resting beside them. The media latched onto the story. The Trail of Painted Stones, they called it. A strange, symbolic breadcrumb path into nowhere. But the leads went cold quickly. No known suspects. No useful witnesses. Forensics couldn't identify any fingerprints on the stones. And the security footage near the school offered no clue. Ruby had simply vanished. 4 years, the Trail of Painted Stones remained an eerie local legend. Until 2 years later, when a nearly identical trail was discovered in Boise National Forest, nearly 400 miles away. A hiker found them first, river stones again, freshly painted, leading toward an abandoned ranger station. Same colors. Same symbols. But this time, they ended at a wall, where someone had painted, in blue script, "Not for you." Inside the cabin was a rusted cot, an old battery-powered lantern, and a sketchbook. The pages were filled with dozens of drawings of children, none of them identifiable, but one page stood out. In pencil, someone had drawn the exact outfit Ruby wore the day she disappeared. Same butterfly shirt. Same pink shoelaces. The Boise discovery reopened the case. FBI analysts compared the paint from both trails. The chemical signature was nearly identical, suggesting the same brand, same batch, and likely the same person. But what disturbed agents the most was the realization that the stones weren't just randomly painted, they formed a pattern. A code. The sequence of symbols mirrored ancient Norse runes associated with travel, hiding, and death. A profiler suggested the possibility of a serial abductor using the trails as ritualistic communication, or a test for others. That theory gained traction when, in 2017, a third trail was discovered. This time in the Sierra Nevada range. The pattern was different, but clearly from the same hand. No child was missing, no remains found, but at the end of the trail, hanging from a tree branch, was a photograph. Ruby Gardner, standing in front of what looked like a log cabin, holding up one of the painted stones. The photo was undated. There was no indication of where it had been taken. Investigators couldn't determine if it was old, doctored, or new. But Ruby's eyes in the photo were unmistakable. Her expression wasn't fearful, but it wasn't quite happy either. More like resigned. By now, her case had drawn national attention. Amateur sleuths, online forums, and YouTube theorists began calling the unknown figure the painter. Some believed the painter was part of a cult. Others suggested he was a drifter with an obsession for ancient codes and symbolic language. One disturbing theory proposed that the painted stones were a way to lure children, each path a mental game, a challenge to follow. But no new trails were discovered for years. Then, in early 2021, a retired park ranger named Dennis Pollard contacted authorities. He claimed that during a camping trip in Idaho's Selway Bitterroot Wilderness back in 2014, just 2 years after Ruby's disappearance, he had seen something odd, a young girl in a red hoodie standing alone at the edge of a cliffside. When he called out, she didn't answer. Instead, she slowly turned and walked back into the trees. Following her, he found a strange rock formation on the ground, dozens of small, painted stones stacked in miniature towers. He never reported it, thinking it was just local kids playing. But when he saw Ruby's photo in the news, he felt sick. He swore the girl he saw was her. Authorities combed the Selway Bitterroot area. They found remnants of an old hunting shack, long abandoned, with faint traces of human activity. Among the debris, a page torn from a children's book, Ruby's name written on the corner. It was the last confirmed clue. Today, Ruby Gardner is still officially missing, her file active but unsolved. The trail of painted stones has become something of a dark myth among hikers in the Northwest. Occasionally, someone reports finding a lone painted rock deep in the wilderness, but most turn out to be hoaxes. Still, FBI profilers believe the abductor is alive, and still playing their game. Some believe Ruby may have been raised in isolation, part of an experiment or twisted education. Others think she's no longer alive, and the photos and trails are part of a performance left behind by the culprit. Either way, the case remains open, and the name Ruby Gardner still sits on the FBI's most notable missing children list. And every so often, a new painted stone arrives anonymously at the Gardner family's doorstep. Always the same spiral. Always freshly painted. The caller from Building 39. The first call came in just past 2 a.m. on a rainy Monday in March 2020. Dispatcher Angela Morris answered the line with her usual calm professionalism. 911, what's your emergency? There was static. Then, a woman's voice, frantic, whispering. Please. I'm in room 117. Building 39. He's coming back. Please help me. Don't let him in. Angela's fingers froze above her keyboard. She asked for the woman's name, her location again, but the voice cut off. Static swallowed the line. Call dropped. Protocol kicked in. Angela traced the number. It came from a burner cell. Untraceable. The system couldn't triangulate the origin, and the area code was listed as defunct. The next night, at exactly 2:04 a.m., the call came again. Same voice. He knows I called. I can't scream. I think he's under the floor again. Angela tried to keep the woman talking, but the call ended after 38 seconds. Room 117. Building 39. Angela flagged the incident and handed it to her supervisor. A routine search of properties with that address yielded a dead end, until one dispatcher dug into city archives. In the 1960s, Building 39 was a wing of the old Marlow Psychiatric Institute, a facility closed and demolished in 1997 after a fire and multiple abuse lawsuits. The building never had a room 117. Its blueprints showed only 116 rooms in total. And yet, the woman kept calling. Every night, same hour, same panic, same phrases. He won't let me out. They built over the truth. Listen to the floorboards. The voice always came with static. Always from an untraceable source. The police were dispatched to the old Marlow grounds. There was nothing left but foundation stones and overgrown grass. They brought dogs, drones, even cadaver-sniffing units. Nothing turned up. But the calls didn't stop. Angela began recording them privately. Over the next few weeks, she collected 12 separate audio files. Analysts at the precinct ran vocal comparisons. The woman's voice matched no one in the missing persons database. However, something odd emerged. Each clip contained background noise. At first it sounded like regular static, but when isolated and enhanced, the noise began to resemble whispered phrases. One phrase repeated in nearly all the calls. Leave the red door closed. There was no context. No red door at the site. No living witness could remember any detail about the Marlow Institute resembling that description. Angela, increasingly disturbed, took the matter to a local reporter who ran a late-night podcast on urban legends. His name was Kevin Mallory, and he specialized in dead signals and unsolved transmissions. He interviewed Angela, listened to the calls, and quickly became obsessed. He found that in 1973, the Marlow Institute briefly used a subwing referred to in one file as Restricted Unit 39, a wing that was supposedly sealed off due to a patient's suicide. Kevin traced staff records and discovered a nurse named Helen Caro who had worked in Unit 39 until the exact year it was shuttered. Caro had gone missing in 1974. Never found. Kevin's podcast about the case gained traction. Audio clips from the calls went viral, dissected by internet sleuths and audio engineers alike. A user on a message board analyzed the background hum in one of the calls and mapped it against low-frequency EM pulses, commonly emitted by old elevator motors. The twist. Building 39, according to those who worked at Marlow, had no elevator. Angela, meanwhile, began having dreams. In them, she stood in a long hallway lit by flickering fluorescent lights. All the doors were numbered except one, a red door at the end of the hall. No number. Just peeling red paint. In her dream, someone was always knocking from the other side. One night, Angela stayed past her shift and waited by the dispatch phone, ready. At exactly 2:04 a.m., the line lit up. She answered. This time, the voice didn't whisper. It screamed. You let him out. You let him out. You let him. And then the power to the dispatch center cut out. The power grid recorded no failure. The outage affected only the emergency call line and only for 42 seconds. When power returned, the call was gone. The recording system glitched and stored only static. Angela never worked a night shift again. Kevin Mallory, still chasing the mystery, decided to visit the site himself with a portable EMF scanner, an audio recorder, and a flashlight. He live-streamed the trip for his followers. The last thing he said before entering the old Marlow ruins was, "If this is all a hoax, it's one hell of a coordinated one." 38 minutes into the stream, viewers reported a strange figure flickering in the corner of the frame, just for a second. A man in white, face obscured. Kevin was reading from a file about Unit 39 when the camera tumbled. There was a long groan of static. The screen went black. Police found Kevin's car the next day, keys still in the ignition. His equipment was gone. So was he. Authorities eventually closed the case, citing potential foul play, but no suspects were ever named. The land was sealed off with a new fence and a trespassing notice. Most people moved on. The podcast lost steam. The story faded. But every year, in the second week of March, Angela still gets the same call. No words now. Just that same, crackling silence. And the sound of breathing on the other end. The faces in the floorboards. In the town of Grayson Hollow, Virginia, the abandoned Hollowell farmhouse sat half-buried in ivy, its shutters loose and creaking like brittle bones. Locals called it cursed. Every town has one house like it, a place so soaked in rumor and tragedy that it becomes invisible to the real estate market, preserved by fear. But in October 2019, a woman named Maya Colton moved in. She wasn't superstitious. She was a photographer looking for stillness and cheap rent. The Hollowell house offered both, and Maya didn't care about the whispers of what happened there back in the 80s. Some said the family vanished. Some said it burned. The real estate agent said only that the property was in need of restoration, and Maya saw potential through the dust. At first, the creaks and thuds of the old house didn't bother her. It was a structure of wood and wind, she figured. Her dog, Winston, growled at corners sometimes, but she chalked it up to nerves. What she didn't expect was what she found beneath the rugs. The third night after she moved in, Maya was dragging an old carpet out of the second-floor study when she stopped. Scratched into the floorboards beneath were crude faces, dozens of them, each about the size of a fist. Childlike in their simplicity, but grotesque in expression. Wide mouths, black eyes, some smiling, some screaming. She paused, took photos, and kept pulling. More faces. Down the hall. Into the next room. Etched directly into the floorboards, as though clawed into the wood. Later, while editing her photos, Maya noticed something odd. In one of the shots, one face looked different. Its mouth was open wider than she remembered. She double-checked the actual floor. Yes, it had changed. Thinking she was sleep-deprived, Maya set up her old Canon on a tripod overnight, aimed it at the hallway, and set it to take interval shots every 2 minutes. She left the lights on and went to bed. In the morning, she checked the camera's SD card. Most of the photos were normal. But around 3:12 a.m., one frame showed a dark figure kneeling over the floorboards. Barefoot. Hands pressed to the wood. Its head tilted unnaturally to one side. The next frame. Empty hallway. But one new face had been scratched into the wood. It hadn't been there before. Maya contacted the Historical Society to ask about the home's previous owners. She was told that records were sparse. The original family, the Hollowells, had lived there until 1983, when all 4 members, mother, father, and 2 children, reportedly disappeared during a snowstorm. No bodies were found. The house had been abandoned since. The officer who led the investigation at the time left behind only one report before resigning. Multiple impressions in the floor resembling distorted human faces. No signs of struggle. Family assumed dead. No trace of forced entry. Maya, now fully unnerved, considered moving out. But the photographer in her was fascinated. She wanted one more night, just one, with motion-activated video. That night, she didn't sleep. She stayed in the living room downstairs, Winston by her side. Upstairs, the camera waited. At 3:11 a.m., the motion sensor triggered. The footage, later examined by police, showed this, a human figure emerging from under the floor itself. As though peeling through the wood like water. It stood motionless for 47 seconds, then lowered its head to the ground and scratched a new face into the boards. The face was Maya's. The footage ends there. The next morning, Maya was gone. No signs of struggle. Her belongings were untouched. Her car was still outside. Winston, the dog, was found hiding in the bathroom, shivering and covered in dust. The police found the carved face in the hallway floor. It was an exact likeness of Maya. Eyes closed, mouth open, as if screaming. Blood had dried around its edges. Her camera was missing. Only a corrupted backup remained on her laptop, and even that vanished days later, overwritten by random static. The hard drive was later found to contain strange audio files, mostly silence, but with occasional faint murmuring. When one of the files was amplified and slowed, it revealed a voice. "If you live above us, you belong to us." The house was sealed by the city and slated for demolition, but every time workers attempted to tear it down, equipment failed. Bulldozers stalled. Chainsaws dulled instantly. One worker reportedly went missing after entering alone to mark the walls. His name was etched into the floorboards the next day. No one has entered since. Locals now leave flowers and salt on the porch each year in October. They say the faces still multiply, slowly, one by one. No one knows what's beneath the house, or if there's a true beneath at all. But sometimes at night, when the wind is quiet, you can hear scratching. The silence of Lanier Street. In the heart of Bloomington, Indiana, sits a narrow stretch of road called Lanier Street. It's barely 5 blocks long, lined with aging homes and cracked sidewalks, surrounded by otherwise ordinary suburban calm. But in 2015, Lanier Street became known for something far from ordinary, a phenomenon that baffled authorities, silenced a community, and left behind 5 missing persons with no answers. It began on May 3rd, when 23-year-old college student Owen Radley went missing. He had rented a room in House 42 Lanier Street, a weathered duplex with ivy crawling up its siding, and was last seen on a grocery store security camera around 9:17 p.m. He never made it home. His phone pinged once more at 9:41 p.m., exactly 300 feet from his front door. Then, silence. His phone went dead, his accounts untouched. No signs of struggle, no witnesses. 2 weeks later, on May 17th, the second disappearance occurred. Linda Bowman, a 62-year-old widow who had lived on the street for decades, vanished while taking her evening walk, a routine she'd followed for years. Her dog was found at the edge of the sidewalk, leash unbroken, barking into the middle of the road. A neighbor claimed they saw her stop, stare forward for a long moment, then simply step forward and disappear, as if swallowed by the air. Police canvassed the area. No security cameras caught the event. No traffic, no pedestrians, nothing. The official report listed unexplained circumstances, and quietly, the neighborhood changed. People stopped walking at night. Porch lights were left on. On June 1st, the silence struck again. This time, it was 2 teenagers, best friends walking home from a party. One of them, Ryan Delaney, called his mother at 11:08 p.m., said they were just a block away. His last words were, "There's something wrong with the street, it's quiet. Too quiet." Neither boy was ever seen again. That call, however, was traced, and the most chilling detail wasn't the content of Ryan's words. It was the 3 full seconds of dead air that followed, where no wind, no crickets, no ambient sound was picked up at all. Just a flat line of absolute silence. Then the call ended. Audio technicians at the university analyzed the phone recording. They confirmed something strange. In those 3 seconds, there were no natural audio frequencies. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of vibration. As though that pocket of space had been cut off from reality. By now, the media had caught on. Lanier Street was dubbed the street that swallowed 5, and theories ranged from serial kidnappings to paranormal portals. The residents were interviewed, but most refused to speak. They were scared. Some moved away. Those who stayed put up cameras, but none ever caught anything useful. In September of that year, the city placed motion sensors along Lanier Street as part of an infrastructure modernization project. But unofficially, those devices were monitored by researchers. Over 2 months, they logged 14 separate events where the sensors detected a sudden, perfect drop in vibration. No footsteps, no wind, no cars, for exactly 3 seconds at a time. These events occurred between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., all near House 42. Then came the final disappearance. On October 12th, Dr. Allison Kettering, a physicist from Purdue University, checked into a motel under an alias and walked onto Lanier Street with a Geiger counter, infrared goggles, and an experimental magnetic anomaly tracker. She had studied the vibration data and suspected the area was experiencing quantum fluctuation voids, a theory she was developing about places where physical laws momentarily fail. She texted a colleague at 12:02 a.m. "It's happening. Everything just stopped. Even my heartbeat feels suspended. I'm not afraid. I think I can hear." That was the last message. Her body was never found. Her devices, however, were. They were discovered the next morning, placed neatly in the center of the street, still powered on. The infrared footage stored inside showed something alarming. At exactly 12 hours 1 minute and 58 seconds, a shimmer passed across the frame, like heat rippling off asphalt. Behind it, the shape of a human figure, not walking but standing motionless. The figure appeared translucent. Then, in the final second, it turned. No face, no features, just static in the shape of a person. Then gone. No other data was recorded after that frame. Following her disappearance, the city quietly blocked off the ends of Lanier Street to non-residents. Road construction, the signs read. Access was permitted only during the day. Night traffic ceased. The local government, pressed for answers, released a brief statement about safety concerns and street integrity issues. But locals knew better. They said the street had always been strange. Radios would drop signal when you drove past. Dogs wouldn't step onto certain patches of sidewalk. And sometimes, just before midnight, everything would stop. Sound, movement, even light felt slower. Today, House 42 sits abandoned. Windows boarded. Door locked. The city has since acquired the property but has made no move to demolish it. A motion-activated light still flickers on sometimes, even with no power connection listed. Visitors occasionally sneak onto the street, daring each other to step where the others vanished. Most hear nothing. Some feel pressure in their ears. A few report intense fear, as if something were standing just behind them. But nothing is ever seen. Not until the silence arrives. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?